All right, so we're live. So, want to talk about this. This is what I'm going to do. It's like a little kind of preview and prediction, not from me, of course. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get YouTubers on in like boxing YouTubers from now, probably once a week. But if enough guys come back to me and they want to do it, we'll get more on. We'll do a bit more. But from now until Dillian Whyte, Tyson Fury, I'm going to get someone on once a week at least, maybe twice, and they're going to, we're going to speak about it. If we disagree on it, we can have a little debate on that. If we're in the same kind of like headspace about it, we'll go on. We'll talk about other things. But for now, first guest, Joe Stunner Boxing. Do you want to introduce yourself, mate?
Joe Stunner Boxing, yeah. I'm Joe Stunner. Started my channel about 6 months ago. It was early October, first week of October, basically because I was off work, sick, and I was in a lot of pain, and I didn't want the sort of physical pain to impact my mental health, so I thought I need to keep my brain busy. So I started a boxing channel, and I really enjoy doing the videos. I know some of you may have subscribed, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I love boxing. I've watched boxing all my life. I'm in my mid-50s now, so I've seen a bit, watched a few fights, and yeah, I love it as much now as I did when I was a kid.
That's crazy. Like, I've only been watching boxing religiously for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I started when I was 18. So I have a lot more to catch up on. In terms of your channel, what would you do on it? It's pretty straightforward. Joe Stunner Boxing. If anyone wants to look it up on YouTube, it'll come straight away. But what would you kind of do? Would you kind of do kind of similar to what I do, break the news, preview fights, and you do a lot of female previews as well and predictions?
Yeah. Look, it's very, very simple, very sort of unfussy. I just record the videos, giving my opinions and make predictions. I do the occasional breakdowns, but there are people on YouTube channels who can do those technical breakdowns much better than I can. Like your Chris Andre and your what's the young lad, Jamie from Punch Perfect.
Jamie Bourne, great mate, good lad.
Yeah, he's very, very good. So I really just give opinions. I like the history of the sport, so sometimes I'll talk about previous eras. I've got a video that I've just done about Phil Martin's Champs Camp. I did that today, which I'm going to post. I do cover women's boxing quite a bit. To me, it's just boxing. It's either good or bad. I think the women's game needs support, but essentially it's sort of 80 years behind the men's. The women are sort of 1900s at the moment. There isn't a great deal of depth of talent. A lot of belts flying around, but you can say that about the men's, can't you? But boxing's just boxing.
Take a bit like me. You take it for what it is.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Take it for what it is.
That's the essence of equality, isn't it? You don't give anyone special privilege. You just take it for what it is.
Take it for what it is. That's why I try and not get downhearted about certain things. Sometimes you do in boxing, but for the most part, it's like it's a fight. You take it for what it is. It is boxing. I'd rather have something small than have nothing at all in the sport. If you get me. So as long as I have something to watch, I'm happy.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say. You're talking about there are problems in boxing. When I watched the Catterall Taylor fight, I was just outraged. It is literally one of the worst decisions I've ever seen, and I've been watching boxing for 40
that's right up there.
Years or something. But then the following week, you get something like Conlon and what's his name?
Lee Wood.
Lee Wood, yeah, you get that, and then it reminds you of how much you love boxing, so you got to take the bad with the good, haven't you?
It's that way inclined. Like 1 week, the sport just kind of pisses you off when you see something like that. Then the next week, you see something like that, reminds you why you love it. Like there's often been days where it's funny enough, like the way it can actually impact on your own mood. There's often been days like I remember Dillian Whyte when he fought Beck in the first time. I was having a really, really shit day that day, like a really, really shit day, and I was like even down in the dumps, even watching that fight, and just the knockout, how sudden it was, it just perked my mood straight up. Just because I love the sport, and it just gave me such an unexpected moment that it just perked me straight up.
100%. But that boxing doesn't always get it right, but when it does get it right, it delivers. It is. I do watch a bit of football. I'm not overly keen on team sports. I like sports that are one-on-one. Like I like a bit of tennis, but boxing, when it gets it right, it is the most thrilling thing I can think.
Yeah, you can't, when a fight is really enthralling and it's intrigued you, and especially when you're kind of just like, it doesn't really happen to me now these days, but because of YouTube and all, like I'm watching it kind of with an eye, it's like trying to analyze it and take it note too down. So I don't really get that kind of like vibe these days. But I remember when I was younger, watching it with my best friend, it was crazy, like how into things we get. Like AJ versus Klitschko, I'll never forget. Me and him just couldn't sit down that entire fight. We were watching it in his house. We just could not sit down.
The best example I can give is, because I'm a couple of years older than you, is Tyson and Douglas. And when Douglas beat, I mean, it's difficult to describe just how indestructible almost Tyson seemed. And for him to lose to Douglas, I was floating around for about 3 or 4 or 5 days after that.
Did you watch that live?
No, I didn't. I heard it. I saw it on the news that he'd been beaten. Like they used to have a little sports section. I haven't had the television for years, but they used to have a little sports section at the end of the news, and they showed Tyson being knocked out by Douglas. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I thought, is this real? Am I dreaming? It was those moments. You know, you live for those moments. And recently, you know, when Wood put Conlan through the ropes at the end of that, I mean, that's an amazing ending. But this is why we love it, because it is so incredibly enthralling when they get it right.
For some reason, I think, is what we're going to talk about in this video, I genuinely, hand on my heart, think that boxing will get it right with Tyson Fury, Dillian Whyte. I really do. I just think that this fight has fireworks written all over it. I got that feeling that it's going to be one of these fights we end up talking about for years to come. It might not be a Hagler-Hearns, but I definitely think that this fight has all the recipes to really catch fire. I don't understand the people who are saying, oh, it's clear Tyson Fury is going to win. I don't think it's that straightforward. That's what I want to talk about. I want to get, because opinion is divided by certain people. And I want to get like a few people on here, have a chat with them, and just see kind of what their opinions are on it. What is Joe Stunner Boxing's opinion? What is his take on Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte? And do you, like me, think that maybe it won't hit the levels of a Gaddy Ward, Hagler-Hearns, but do you think we'll be talking about this fight for a long time to come? Do you think we may even say, hang on a sec, never mind undisputed, we want a rematch?
Okay, well, I don't normally make predictions until we get really close to the actual fight itself. And I've got to be honest, I still have doubts whether it will go ahead. I think
really?
Something might happen. It's difficult to predict. I think it will be a good fight. I agree with you there, because I think Whyte's got a real bone to pick with Fury. And even though he's been silent, he ain't going to like all this garbage that's been talked about him.
No.
So he's going to want a piece of Fury, which whenever you make a prediction, you assume that both fighters are going to be at their optimum best, so physically and mentally prepared. Now, if that's the case, and Fury and they park their egos at the door and box sensibly and fight as they should fight, and don't just have a little, you know, car park brawl like the third Wilder Fury fight, I think what we'll see Fury probably out sticking behind the jab, trying to soften Whyte up. I know Whyte doesn't fight like Derek Chisora, but the second Chisora Fury fight, I think Fury will try to keep him on the end of the jab, bust him up. Whyte is a live opponent. I think if he gets that left hook in, don't forget, if Fury's hit, he goes on the floor. He gets up. So far, he gets up. So his recovery powers are very, very good indeed. Whereas Whyte has been starched twice, knocked out. That's the difference. Does Fury have the power to knock Whyte out? I'm sure he does. He certainly put him on the floor. I think people are probably overlooking the fact that Whyte has the power to knock Fury over as well. Fury's talking about coming in heavier than he ever has done, 290 something. I never pay the remotest attention to anything Tyson Fury says, because he talks everything from absolute common sense to complete and utter rubbish. So I don't know. Is that a ruse to try and to put an idea in Whyte's head? I like the fact that Whyte is silent, saying nothing, and that's good, because I think that doesn't. Fury feeds off people's reaction.
Exactly. I was going to just say that.
Yeah, and I don't think that Whyte is allowing that to happen. He's not an unintelligent man. I mean, he's because he didn't have much of an education. There's a tendency to confuse education with intelligence. They're two very different things.
They
I
are.
think Whyte's an intelligent guy, and I think he's not going to. Fury won't get in his head, you know. But I lean towards Fury, but I don't think there's much in it. 55, 45, 60, 40 maybe.
I think what you said there about Whyte being very intelligent and really understanding the game, he's a student of the game.
Yes.
He's a student of boxing. And I'm sure Dillian Whyte knows Tyson Fury, this is what he likes. He likes it when someone takes the bait, He would love for me to react and give him something else to hit me with in terms of like slander. He would love for me to get into a shout match with him, because all that would just give Tyson Fury oodles of confidence. So Dillian Whyte is being very smart and intelligent by biting his tongue, keeping quiet. And I'm sure Dillian Whyte knows, because he's a smart man. He knows this is what Fury wants. I'm not going to give it to him.
I would be more intimidated by Dillian Whyte than Tyson Fury if I was in a dark alleyway. They both beat the living crap out of me, of course.
I was going to say, they both beat the shit out of me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dillian Whyte is a presence, is a real genuine presence. And of course, a boxing ring isn't a brawl. It's not well, it can be, I suppose, but it's not a street fight. But I don't think Fury is going to have a mental advantage over Whyte. I think he's going to have to earn the win by using his physical attributes, and it isn't going to be a case of him intimidating Whyte, and Whyte, goes off his game plan or goes in there almost feeling he's 2 or 3 rounds down already. And but an upset, yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Yeah.
Do you think you were saying earlier about Tyson Fury saying he's coming in heavy, and I agree with you. He's taught with Fury. It's a case of you expect him to talk, say one thing 1 minute and something the next. You don't pay any minds anymore. Yeah. But with the weight thing, whenever they've talked about weight, they've always actually been pretty on the ball with that. Like they said going into the Wilder rematch, we all thought it was misdirection. I certainly did, and it wasn't. We thought again going into the trilogy fight, how would he do? Would he go lighter just to be on the safe side? He came in, I think he was actually lighter, but aesthetically looked worse. Yeah. With weight, I wonder, does he actually think, does he feel so confident he can hurt Dillian Whyte that if I'm even heavier than him, I can actually outman the man? And maybe that would mentally get to Dillian Whyte if he's being outmanned by Tyson Fury as well as being outboxed by him.
Yeah, if you've got a big guy in front of you, whenever he gets close, ties you up and leans on you, and there's a ton of weight, I mean, that's going to affect you. But just the idea of saying I'm going to come in the 290s or whatever, I can't remember the exact quote.
Yeah, it was about 290s. He must be a man mountain, he said.
Yeah, well, he's already a man mountain. I mean, I've never met him, but the guy was 6'9". If he weighs say 290, but the idea that you just say I'm going to come in the 290s immediately will get someone thinking, is he telling the truth? Is he lying? So immediately you're thinking, if I was Dillian Whyte, I'd be saying, I don't give a fuck when you come in, what you come in. I do not care. You can come in at 350. What does it matter to me? I wouldn't let him I wouldn't base any game plan around the assumption that Fury's going to come in heavy. Wouldn't surprise me if he did, though. Like you say, he's said it in the past. He's been, very actually very honest about his game plans, but people say, he won't come in that heavy. When he came in heavy for the second Wilder fight, I thought it was a mistake.
So did I. Many people I knew after the weigh-in actually said they actually felt that he was cashing out after that. A lot of people I saw who were like, even people who were like, I would respect their opinion on boxing very much. They're not on YouTube, but the boxing trainers said he's cashed out. He's cashed out, dude. That's literally a cash out. And I was thinking, Jesus, maybe he has. So we all were like shocked at how much they seem to know that we obviously they're working with him, but we from the outside looking in, it just looked like a mistake. We were all wrong. The majority of us were anyway.
Well, we don't have insight, we're not privy to what goes on behind the closed doors. This is why a lot of these top journalists, the ones that get it right, that's because they've heard things from the training camps. We don't get that actually. So we simply we make too many presumptions which turn out to be false, but that's the way it is.
It is. And it's funny as well. Do you here's another thing about Tyson Fury, which you have to say, like, it's a strength in a way, because with Tyson Fury, when he says he always contradicts himself, and we always kind of think, oh, he's just contradicting himself, or it's Tyson Fury is saying he's going to come in heavy. He won't actually, but whenever he does say, like, that's what I'm going to do, we tend to think he's going to do the opposite, and a lot of times it catches the opponent by off guard. Like, I'm sure for Deontay Wilder, we know he's not the brightest, but Mark Breland is when he was in the corner. And I'm sure Mark Breland would have been able to say, would have even looked at it and said, nah, he's not going to do that. And I think it caught Team Wilder off guard. Do you think maybe Dillian Whyte would be thinking, oh, maybe he is going to come in heavy for Tyson Fury to come in, maybe even lighter? And maybe that would be something that Dillian Whyte could say, oh, crap, now I wasn't expecting to be this fast, because he's, say, 263, heavy, lighter, and has that bit more mobility. And Dillian Whyte being a slow-footed fighter was like, oh, crap, I wasn't ready for this.
Well, actually, the point about Dillian's footwork, I think he's got, very mediocre footwork. Oh, it's not great, is it?
No.
that's why I'm
No,
thinking.
definitely not great.
Yeah. I mean, when he got knocked out by Povetkin, his feet were all positioned completely wrong. He was square on, but
It's something he's never addressed.
No, yeah, no, I agree. He's got very poor footwork. But if Fury does come in lighter, if he can come in lighter, because you've got to, I remember, I'm old. This is how old I am. I can remember the end of Muhammad Ali's career, and I remember against Larry Holmes when Ali came in looking in pretty good shape. Who was it? Angelo Dundee said, "Light ain't right." He knew that Ali had made the weight completely wrong and had drained his energy. Now, if Fury doesn't feel strong and physically on the money at 260, he shouldn't come in. He should come in at 280. If 290 if he feels fine, if he feels he can do 12 hard rounds, 12 grueling rounds at 290, come in at 290. As far as Whyte is concerned, you've got to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. So if he's got to have a plan for getting close to a mover, and he's got to be prepared. What am I going to do if this huge man grabs hold of me and he's up close? How am I going to fight on the inside? How am I going to be lent on, having my energy drained, being spoiled? And this is in both those scenarios, because you need good footwork for both. Even if you're up close, you need to give them angle, sidestep, and keep your shape and keep your positioning.
He is someone who makes mistakes as well when he leads with shots on the inside as well. We know that.
Yeah. I mean, don't forget, Parker nearly knocked him out, and he was on the floor against Rivas, and so he can be hurt, but by smaller men. Fury, not a big one-punch hitter, but he hits hard enough to get your attention. So I think the point you made about the footwork is really, really valid, because I do worry about Dillian in that respect.
And someone like Fury, who has good boxing fundamentals, who is good with his feet, someone like that is the real big worry for Dillian Whyte, in terms of not just punch resistance. How is he going to take a shot? It's just, how are you going to be able to close the range out? How are you going to get out of the way? People always say that Dillian Whyte, that style that Tyson Fury showed against Deontay Wilder in both fights, Dillian Whyte likes that. That's but Dillian Whyte's feet are so slow that he's not going to be in the position. He's not going to be able to get to Fury. His feet are just that slow. His footwork is so uncoordinated. That's the kind of worry I have for him. But at the same time, there's so many variables on Fury's end that I'm thinking about as well, that has me just thinking this fight's going to catch fire. You touched on something at the start of this video where you said you don't think it's going to happen. You're still kind of in two minds about that. What do you think? What do you want to elaborate more on that? Because I wasn't expecting you. I was expecting just to be a case of this is how it's going to be and that's it. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, I have no evidence. This is purely a hunch, I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. And I've been wrong about things like this before, but I just, I never thought the AJ Fury fight would come off. And they found that way.
It had that feel about it, didn't it? It did. And I'll admit, towards the end, I kind of started to buy into it, because I was thinking, maybe, but from the get-go, I was kind of like, nah, it's not going to happen. But then I started to buy into it, and obviously your first reaction is usually right.
With this one, I just think that with the whole issue of the purse bid, the cut 80-20, the fact that Dillian has got I don't know, did he get rid of the lawsuit, or is that still pending?
I haven't heard. As far as I'm aware, that's still pending, because I haven't heard anything about it being dropped. Maybe something did happen behind the scene. Sometimes that doesn't actually come out until maybe after. So, but as far as I'm aware, it's still going through. I think actually it was due. I think actually something was due this actual week, stemming back in January or December. Yeah,
all this creates a sort of cloud above the whole event, and I really hope I'm wrong. And I'm not saying it won't go ahead. I'm just saying I have a hunch that it might not go ahead. That something will happen. Someone will pull out with an injury or something like that. But again, I hope I'm wrong.
I certainly hope not. I think we're about a month away, so it wouldn't be the first time it's happened to Tyson Fury, and him as the champion, and him as kind of the B side almost, like against David Haye. I think David Haye pulled out on fight week, for their fight. So I certainly hope that doesn't happen. I really do think this is a good fight, but at the same time, what you touch on there about Dillian Whyte, the purse bid situation, I'm sure Eddie Hearn wouldn't be devastated if Dillian Whyte did pull out and decided to just stick on the zone and fight whoever, because I'm sure for Eddie Hearn, he's thinking, I need a star on the zone. And if you get knocked out by Tyson Fury and, battered, how am I going to promote you in terms of how am I going to have you at that level now? Yeah, people will still watch you, but how are they going? They're not going to pay. They're not going to do a pay-per-view. Maybe Eddie Hearn subconsciously is thinking, I don't really mind if he pulls out.
Yeah. Well, that's a different subject. The way DAZN and Eddie, I mean, that's a whole can of worms.
That's
right
the
there.
next subject I'm going to ask you when we finish up on this. I'm trying to casually lead into that.
Yeah. No, it's. Well, what do I say about that? I think who would Eddie match Dillian with if he pulled out of the Fury fight? I'd have to think about that.
I reckon he would give Otto Wallin that payday and give him that fight. Yeah. I think Eddie feels maybe, and I can kind of see, and I wouldn't be shocked if Eddie did do this, because there is a bit of humanity in him, and I do think he would say, look, we kind of cost you a bit of money that time, you can have it now. And I do think he'd do it. I think he'd do it.
I think in terms of having seen a lot of promoters and gone through the whole Don King era, I think Eddie, as far as promoters go, isn't by any shade, by any sense of the imagination, the worst promoter out there. Like in the sense of the way he treats fighters, no one's ever taken a litigation out against Eddie.
And Eddie's never been one for. Eddie isn't like a certain someone who will sue them out of house and home.
Well, we know who we're talking about there, but again, I remember him when he started up. He who shall not be mentioned. I remember him when he started up, and he was considered at the start to be like Eddie was when Eddie first came along, because he kind of broke up the cartel, the Mickey Duff, Jarvis Astaire, Levine cartel. And he was the great champion who was going to, offer boxers all sorts of opportunities and blah, blah, blah. Of course, there were only 2 world title belts back then, but he soon became the establishment. And I think Eddie, if he wants to continue the great success he's had, will have to avoid becoming viewed as the establishment. He must still be seen. I mean, the whole DAZN thing was a very sort of audacious attempt to, and I supported it and still support the idea of DAZN.
So do I.
But I think it was an audacious attempt to do something, and the mistake he's made is to do it too quick. When Sky started up, I remember subscribing to Sky when it first started up. Almost no one had it. Most people didn't know what it was. And this great satellite telly thing. What's all that about then? And also because there's a monopolies commission in England, there was a lot of illegal trouble with that. So BT, I think it was, started up Sky B or something. It had a different name to avoid there being a monopoly for Murdoch's Sky. But Murdoch was plugging in £1 million. I think it was at one point it was £1 million a day from his newspaper, the Times, the Sun, and so on, News of the World when it existed, into Sky in order to get it recognised. But it took several years. They were losing a ton of money. The same thing is happening with DAZN now, because it's a new concept, a boxing app, a boxing Netflix, if you like. By the way, Netflix is another company that lost a shit ton of money when it started up. But eventually, as it becomes established as a mainstream platform, people pick up on it. The question is, can it survive, losing that amount of money without going out of business? You remember Satanta? I do. That went out of business because it couldn't get a grip on the mainstream public psyche. And I think DAZN is doing okay. Certainly the product's very good. I think the quality of the DAZN cards has been very, very good, especially
don't get me wrong. I think the quality of the cards in terms of the action has been very, like that Liverpool card was absolutely fantastic that Eddie Hearn put on a couple of months ago. I think you touched on something in your video yesterday where you said Eddie let his ego kind of almost think that he did everything. And Sky didn't do it. Sky were just the middleman. He was the brains of the operation. I think now it's kind of, he's having a come to Jesus moment where it's like, okay, they really did help me. And I think that Eddie Hearn, like I've always said, my biggest gripe with DAZN is just the broadcast team. I think it's absolutely horrible. I think if you have Ade and Laura Wood is all right and Andy Lee is perfect. The rest of it, to me, it's just a case of job for the boys. And I think that shouldn't be. It should be a case of who did the fans want, not who the promoter wants. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that Malignaggi isn't on British television is an absolute tragedy.
I think we know that. I don't think Frank Smith, as long as he has that quiff, he won't let Malignaggi anywhere near it.
But as far as Eddie's ego goes, that look, I definitely think that's the mistake he made, because if you are in charge of a great successful product, a company that's doing fantastically well, there is a tendency to forget about the foot soldiers, the behind the scenes people. That's why, the Oscars, when they have a movie, they don't just have best actor, best film. They have best, technician, best lighting, best sound. In other words, they're honoring the people that helped those that are in the foreground, that are the visual ones, that helped them achieve what they achieved. Now, Eddie seemed to have got to the point where he thought, I created the success of Sky Boxing. Well, Eddie, to a large extent you did, but you've forgotten the platform, the enormous, foghorn publicity platform that makes an absolute row through all its news outlets and gets the public to think, oh yeah, I must watch that fight. So if you go to, if you're watching, say, football or another sport on Sky, what do you get? You get adverts for the boxing. It's coming up. This is coming up. So people watching it go, oh yeah, that's lovely. I'll have a bit of that.
Yeah.
DAZN doesn't have that platform, and that's why it's suffering. That's why DAZN is considered a fringe platform even now, even though it's got 3 billion quid behind it, whatever. Sky is the mainstream. DAZN is at the point that Sky was in 1990, 1991, and it needs to grow naturally. You can promote, but the public will only pick it up when they're ready.
Exactly. I think you touched on, and I agree with you, that in hindsight, the benefit of hindsight, looking back, DAZN needed more time with having like Eddie with Sky and doing them both together, because look, people always say like, gee, you're a hater on DAZN. It's like, I'm not. I feel like there are parts of it that need to be changed, and the reason why I speak about it is that I know Ade watches my videos, and I know some other people in kind of DAZN would, and I'm hoping that might influence some of them to change the bits I want changed.
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual concept, it is such a brilliant concept that I want nothing more than for it to succeed. I genuinely do. I think it's an absolutely fantastic concept, but boxing, I don't like to say it, but it is a niche sport. It's not up there with football. So, it needs a lot more time. It needs to have a promoter like Sky, not pushing DAZN necessarily, but having the benefit of saying like, it's available on this, or maybe even if it was, the American shows that were on DAZN, you could say like, oh, Sky could maybe run a plug on something like that. If it was one of their fighters, best of luck to John Ryder fighting Danny Jacobs in America, you can catch it on DAZN, something like that to help it along, and would give people, oh yeah, what's this app DAZN? Oh yeah, and stuff like that. So I wanted to succeed, but I just think it's maybe needed another 2 or 3 years with Sky helping along the way.
I think your point was a really good one when you said that Eddie should have carried on with that dual devotion to Sky. And
in hindsight, at the time, I thought it was a good move, but looking back in the benefit of hindsight,
I think he jumped ship too soon. And I think, I agree with you. I mean, I probably wouldn't have thought this at the time. I'd have thought, okay, he's going to DAZN, good luck, Eddie. But he is a brilliant promoter, and it's a shame that more people haven't signed up to DAZN. I desperately want DAZN to succeed. If you think back to Box Nation, I mean, Frank was building Box Nation on an established platform, which was satellite. I can't remember. It's just on TV. You can watch it on TV. It's on.
Watch it on TV.
It wasn't
it wasn't an app. And obviously, when he had BT Sport, they were doing the same shows together. So you had them both, really, essentially. I think if you had BT, one of the kind of like perks was you got Box Nation free. So there was always that kind of, even with the Box Nation days, they had a platform helping it, so to speak.
Yeah, and Box Nation lost a lot of money initially. Yeah. And I mean, an awful lot of money. I mean, you can see that on Company's House. But nevertheless, I think Frank sort of lost interest once he got the BT contract, and there was, I think his son, was it George Francis, made he built a deal with BT, and then after that, Box Nation was put on the back burner. But that wasn't even an app, and that struggled. Now we're talking about a whole new concept of a platform, which is an app, which is boxing through app. A great idea, but it takes time. These things take time. It's like Netflix when it started up. Blockbuster didn't close all their stores like that. It took time for Netflix, and they were losing a ton of money, to become established. Then gradually they took over, and the whole idea of DVDs died a bit of a death. And these things can take 5 years,
many years,
and you've got to have a big wallet for 5 years.
And one thing Box Nation did, which I actually credit them for, was they didn't just show Queensberry cards. They took cards from everywhere.
Yes, they did. Yeah,
they were taking cards from Russia. They were taking Top Rank, PBC, Golden Boy. They were taking all kinds of every card. So there was always a different card for a different fan. Whereas the Zone, it is the Zone or Golden Boy. And Golden Boy aren't doing as many cards these days. You have no choice. It's Matchroom, Golden Boy. That's essentially it. I know they do a few kind of Usyk cards when he promotes shows in his native country when everything kind of gets back to normal over there. But that's essentially it. Whereas Box Nation wasn't just Queensberry. You had a bit of this, you had a bit of that, you had a bit of this. You essentially had a fight on every week almost. I remember at one stage, there was literally every other week you saw Steve Bunt and Barry Jones. It was a different card. So
they mixed the old. Sorry to interrupt. They mixed the old with the new.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's really what Sky are trying to do. I mean, they've got Ben Shalom, who's a sort of budding promoter, and he's finding his way. Some of the undercards on Sky have been absolutely atrocious.
Garbage.
Yeah, but Adam Smith also brought in Top Rank. I mean, a massive juggernaut of a promotional company. So they're mixing the foreign with the domestic, the old with the new, and again that will take time, Exactly. But I think Sky have actually turned a corner. When Eddie left, everyone said, "Oh, Sky are going to pot."
I really did. I genuinely was thinking, where could they go? What could they do? But I have to say, look, the undercards. I give Ben Shalom this. He only has so many people in his roster at the minute that I'm sure you can't expect him to be saying, "I'm putting these guys in 50, having all my prospects lose because I've only got about 10 of them." So that's I can understand. I can give him, and it's early days at Sky. I would expect in the next year or so it will get bigger, and you'll see more people sign with Ben Shalom. Yeah. But I think Sky are looking fantastic. I really do. I think it's almost like Eddie Hearn left and they were dust themselves down, back on the horse, and they've got on it spectacularly. I think it's brilliant what they're doing with Ben Shalom.
Definitely. And again, it will take time. Shalom, I mean, what is Ben Shalom? 26, 28?
27. He's 27. He looks older than that. I genuinely thought he was older than that, but he's only 27, younger than me.
When I was 27, I was, playing guitar, chasing women and getting into fights. I mean, it was, and this guy's actually, what he's done, it's amazing for what he's doing as a young kid. I mean, to me, as a kid, 27 ain't nothing. I mean, to be a promoter at that age, fantastic. So he's on the right. It'll take time. Like you say, he's got to sign up more people. But it's a growing thing. It's the old cliche, isn't it? Rome wasn't built in a day. You've got to think about the long game. And for someone like Eddie, who's always prided himself on being a number cruncher, his old man was he a
accountant?
Accountant, yeah. And Eddie's very good with the figures. He always bases it on figures. He can't be happy that Zone have lost $1 billion in that's $1 billion. That's unbelievable.
And he must know in his head he can't be happy, and he must know they're not going to be happy. And I'm the main promoter, so they're not going to really be looking at Oscar because they're like, well, you've got nobody. You're the one putting the big shows on. Where's our money gone?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. No, Oscar, I mean, I think Golden Boy...
it's sad because I did like Golden Boy. I always liked them. I liked their approach. Oscar is a bit of a clown, but the way he dealt business, and another promoter who you never see him really getting... Canelo, but Canelo was such a star. Canelo knew he could do more on his own. But with his current fighters, you never really see any issues.
Well, ever since, Get Your Popcorn Ready left, what's his name?
Richard Schaefer.
Ever since he left, Golden Boy hasn't been the same. They've still got a few good fighters, but when someone leaves, when someone major leaves any company, when someone who really is the guy who controlled the rudder and steered the ship, when he leaves, you've really got to find a replacement. And I'm not quite sure Golden Boy have done that. Why did Canelo leave Golden Boy? Do you know?
I think he was having issues with Oscar, and at the time he was looking to get clear of his DAZN contract because he was locked into, I think, DAZN for so many fights, and I think he was able to get clear of both of them. And then now he's just kind of on. He does what he wants. He'll get these 2 fights with Matchroom. He could go to PBC again. He could potentially go back to Golden Boy for a fight if he wanted. If they had a Gizudo Ramirez or something, but he can go wherever he wants now. Essentially, once his deal with DAZN is done.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's well, Canelo. I mean, what was he making? 25 million a fight, 50
And
million?
the rest, and the rest.
I don't even know. I mean, he obviously made. I remember when Floyd left. As HBO, he described the $12 million contract as a slave contract, and I'm thinking, $12 million for a slave? You're joking? And then he went on to make hundreds of millions. So he was right. And it's the same with Canelo. He seems to have done the same thing.
I have the one thing I admire so much about Canelo is this is a fighter who's done it all. He's literally like, what more is there for him to do? He's making sums of money that people can only dream about, and the hunger is never gone. The hunger is still there.
Well, he's consummate professional. Look, I'll be honest with you. Open up another can of worms here, but I'm very, very suspicious of the whole Eddie Reynoso setup. Very suspicious. But you know what I'm saying. But as far as his actual work ethic is concerned, you know, staying ready between fights and so on, you can't fault that. The concept that it's like Floyd. Floyd, you know, he had hundreds of millions of dollars, and he'd still dedicated. He'd still be at 3 o'clock in the morning. He'd be opening his gym. Huge question mark over the Reynoso setup for me personally. But if I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong. You can't fault the work ethic of Canelo.
No. I don't think I see him out of the ring for more than a week. You know, between fights, and then he's posting pictures of himself back in training. I want to give a big shout out to Nick. We all know Nick Harmer, 86 in the building. Big up to him. Only 24 likes. If you could smash the like button, there's over 100 in the building now. So if you could, lads and lassies, it really helped your boy out. There you go, 102 in the building. Smash the like button. It definitely helps your boy. That's the thing. It helps. I always say that it does genuinely help getting the likes up. So if 100 people, if we get 50 likes, I'd be super happy. And there's 100 people in the chat. Joe Stunner Boxing, who I've had on so far. We're not finished. We're still going to keep going. Literally type that in. Go and check out his channel. It's been a great channel so far. And as Nick says, he hopes you're well. Big up to Nick every time.
You're right, mate.
But in terms of, we're talking about DAZN, like Eddie, I would imagine that fight camp is coming up probably in the summer. Do you expect to see changes with DAZN? Do you expect to see the cards improve? Do you think the structure of the team will improve? Or do you think Eddie's ego is going to be kind of almost a case of, I made this decision, I say what's happening, and I love history, right? I absolutely love history. And you know, Eddie Hearn reminds me of English monarch Richard II. He reminds me of him. He was known for being a spoiled brat who wouldn't change, and Eddie kind of reminds me of him.
Well, Eddie, I'll defer to you about Richard II. I don't know a great deal about it. But Eddie, the thing about a spoiled brat is they expect something. Usually, they expect something from nothing. And the one thing Eddie does have is that work ethic that we were talking about earlier. He works his nuts off. He's old. Now, that's not to say you can't be a spoiled brat as well. And if you're talking about the structure of DAZN, I would imagine, and this is only sort of a guess really, but if I'm the CEO of a company and they've lost £1 billion, I'm going to want an explanation. I'm going to say, well, hang on a minute, I'm meant to be making money here. Why don't you explain to me when I'm going to start seeing something for my £1 billion? Because legacy is all very well, and offering of something is all very well. I presume DAZN isn't a charity. I assume it wants to make money. It wants to become established. Unless they're playing a very, very long game, like over 20 years, losing £1 billion can't be a positive thing. As far as the team's concerned, do you mean the production team, like the announcers and all that?
Yeah.
You see, I'm not as, I don't think they're great, but I'm not as down on them as you and others are. I know a lot of you really can't stand them. I agree with you about Laura Wood. I think she's very good. I think Addy, I followed Addy since it was Box Talk days, Addy and Ryan.
Same, yeah.
So I'm really happy he's doing well. He seemed like a really great guy.
He is, honestly, having known him for a while, he is. And that means the world to him, that gig. And he's killing it. He's absolutely killing it over there.
Oh, I'm delighted for it. I think he used to work for Fox, didn't he? Fox in Africa or something?
Yes. Yeah, no, in South Africa. I think he even covered I think he even covered Beeson Machunu, several of his fights.
That's right. Yeah, because I remember. But no, would I change? I like Andy Lee.
I do.
I had high hopes for Costello because I love him on the radio, but he has not translated well on television. It's a different gig, right? Look, I'm someone who used to listen to a lot of boxing on the radio back in the day. Costello was brilliant, really brilliant. But TV is different. You've got to have a certain. First of all, you've got to say less, because on the radio you're literally describing.
Yeah, you're describing it word for minute.
Yeah. On TV, you don't need to do that. You need to fill it. You need to fill in. Shall we say, add some colour to what the person is seeing. Put it that way. And I don't think Costello has mastered that. And I think that's a shame, because I thought he was brilliant on the radio. The other guy. Sorry, go ahead.
I think Andy Clark would have been a great lead commentator. I think he's very underrated, very good.
Yeah, possibly. The other guys, what is it? Darren Barker and the other fellow. I can't remember the fellow's name.
Chris Lloyd.
Chris Lloyd. I like Barker. They're very sort of vanilla, aren't they? I don't think they're I don't think they don't know what they're talking about. They don't stand there talking drivel, but at the same time, they don't really inspire, do they? They don't really lift you up.
No,
really, stir the pot a bit so that you're really excited about what you're watching. Who would I bring in? Well, we talked about Malignaggi. We mentioned him. It's difficult to know.
I would absolutely love some characters. Like I would love a David Hay and Carl Froch on there, because it adds something. It adds a bit of character. I actually think that David Hay and Carl Frampton, as a punditry team, BT Sport, have had them work well. You've Frampton with the knowledge and you've Hay with the charisma. I think it just works.
I'm not a massive fan of Hay as a commentator, as an analyst. I like Frampton. I like Barry Jones. I think he's good.
One of my favourites, exactly, as well.
Yeah, it's difficult. I'd have to think about this. Who would I replace him with? I mean, let's try and accentuate the positive. Laura Woods is very good. I don't know what happened to Maya Jama, Mrs. Pajamas, what her name was, but she started off after one or two. I don't know what happened with her, but they were trumpeting her as being like the big, presenter. I don't think she even knew anything about boxing. I don't think she was interested in.
She didn't have a clue. And to be honest, I think probably having to learn it was maybe the turn off. And God knows. I mean, she called, what was it? Tommy McCarthy, Paul McCarthy. It's not even close. You can understand sometimes if you maybe get a name wrong by it, like if it sounds the same as something, but like they're not even close.
Yeah, no, it's best to hire people who know exactly what they're talking about, rather than who would I replace? Do you know what? I'm rather tongue-tied because I don't really know. There's no one that really grabs me, to be honest. I mean, I really think Andy Lee is very, very good.
I think he's brilliant. Brilliant boxing mind.
Because if you're a viewer, you want to have insight into what's going on, and this is why Malignaggi is so good. He describes it so brilliantly, and you want to sit there thinking, "Oh yeah, I noticed that. Oh yeah, that's a good point." You want to be informed as well as excited. So that when you, at the end of the fight, when it's been a great fight and you're chatting to your mates, you're saying, yeah, what about that bit? What about that? Oh yeah, I didn't see that bit. But you've been informed by the commentator. And so you actually understand what you're watching. Because it's like before I started my YouTube channel, I was thinking, does the world need another boxing YouTube channel? Because there's so many of them. And I watched a load of them and they were bloody awful. Because a lot of them didn't know what they were talking about. So I thought, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And there are some great channels. I mean, really great channels, on there. I mean, Chris Andre, Hatman, Boxing Beats, Unrivaled, Jamie's channel, Punch Perfect. There's a young lad in America, Supermax Boxing or something.
Mighty Max, yes. I was on here on Monday.
He's great. He's only, 16? And Jesus 16. Christ, I'm ancient. But you listen to listen to him, he's 16 years old. The kid knows what he's talking about. So boxing's in good hands. But as usual, the majority of the channels are just not very good, and hence the reason I started mine. I thought, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Where was I going with this?
We were talking about who we'd like to see on the DAZN team.
Well, why don't we do it, G-Man? You and me, we'll give it a go.
I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to. I think I'm too honest. I think I'm too honest, so I don't think I get that. I don't think I get that gig.
I usually swear too much, so I'd be off before the end of the first week. I could behave myself today, but I'm normally terrible with the swear words.
That's the one thing YouTube's taught me is don't swear, because they'll flag your unit, they'll flag your video. So just it taught me how to hold my tongue when I wanted to. Sometimes I've let it slip. Sometimes you have to, especially when you're doing the watch along, you let stuff slip. But yeah, that's one thing YouTube's taught me how to do, is just to hold the tongue. not let the F-bombs go.
So so do they demonetize you and you're not allowed to make money? Or
it depends. Like they can limit the monetization, which basically means you make no money. Like if it's limited, you essentially got a video that has like 2,000 views and you might get 12 pence for it. Or they could just demonetize it, in which case you don't make anything. And that's not a good look, because you may as well. That's why Hatman has said he would always delete them videos, because if you get one, a bot will start scanning other ones. So you're best to just get rid of it. You're best to just get rid of it before anything happens. If it's limited, that's all right. It's not the end of the world. But if it's demonetized, you want to get rid of that pretty quick. And it can be something small. Like he had one flag for a tweet saying the F-bomb. I think it was Teofimo Lopez.
Well, we better stop fucking swearing then.
I think Ade does it, and his seems to be fine. So I think it depends. I think it just depends on, some people are lucky, some people aren't. But because we've gone for nearly an hour, and I want to have one last topic that I really want your opinion on, because it kind of went under the radar, but it's a very kind of, it's a subject I have a very big opinion on. Jarrell Big Baby Miller, he should be cleared of box come June. What are I on that after everything?
Well,
but quick one.
I may have to start swearing, Gmail. I may have to start.
Before you go any further, I just want to say, right, StreamYard does this sometimes where it acts up a little bit. Yeah. So I'm going to leave the floor to you, and I'm going to reset my end. The stream will stay going, but it'll just be you on the floor for the next minute or so, because I don't want this booting either of us, so I'm going to fix this. So I'll leave this floor to you. Let me know your thoughts on Jarrell Miller, the fact that we may yet see him come the summer in the ring after 2 failed drugs tests, and not just any drugs, big ones.
Yeah. Okay. Jarrell Big Baby Miller should be banned for life. That's number one. And the reason for that is, do I need to state the reason for that? Look, as G-Man just mentioned, he's taking drugs that you have to inject them. So he accidentally injected himself, did he? Oh, I didn't realize what I was injecting myself with. What is this other than the biggest type of bullshit? Boxing is dangerous enough. People get killed anyway. The idea that someone can go in there as a walking fucking pharmacy and, batter people and risk killing them. I think that Miller should not only be banned for life, I think his last, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know, fights should all be called no contests, because he's cheated. It's as simple as that. He's cheated in a vocation, which is already extremely dangerous. I can't really see a counter argument. The guy's been beat. The guy has been caught cheating repeatedly. Let me just give you a little bit of personal testimony. I work for a drug and alcohol service, helping people with addiction problems. And we have a needle exchange. And a lot of the guys come in and they're on steroids, the bodybuilders, okay? And they do their cycles and so on. And our job is to sort of explain to them what they need to do to sort of it's harm minimization, various sites, keep them clean, and so on and so forth. Now, in order to do that, it's almost like a science. So Miller, it's not a case of Miller sort of drinking the odd, energy drink, and there's something in there that's going to show. This guy was sticking needles in himself. He knew what he was doing. His team knew what they were doing. How is he not banned for life? I think it's an absolute outrage. And if he was here, and again, he's another one who kicked the living hell out of him, I'd tell him to his face, you're a fucking cheat and you should be banned for life. Sorry, YouTube, for the rude words.
One thing that really irritated me, I don't know if you talked about it already, was the knack of him to accuse Anthony Joshua of being on performance-enhancing drugs when he himself was the one who was roided up to the you-know-what. Oh. I won't go there.
Well, no, this is gaslighting of the first order. And, that you see that, again, I don't want to talk about myself all the time, but a lot of the clients I have who have drug and drink issues, a lot of them have suffered from domestic violence as well. Not just the women, but the men sometimes. And it's, you hear this frequently. The perpetrator will blame the person that they are opposed to, or that they want to put the heat on, of doing the exact same thing that they are doing. gaslighting. Miller is just a ghastly.
He is an absolute piece of
Yeah.
something. He really is.
He's atrocious. Kick him out of the sport, for fuck's sake. What does he have to do to get banned for life? I don't understand it. I just don't understand any kind of counter argument to that.
I think he needs to be banned for life. I think some people were saying 3 years, 2 years. I don't think any of that's enough. I think that it would actually help the sport as a whole, because it would make an example out of someone, and you would be able to say, well, hang on a sec, I want to get to the top, but I don't want to leave this sport when I've lots left because I'm banned for life. You know, I think that he needs to be gone. But saying that, and I got to ask you this question: will you still watch him when he comes back? If they announced him, Jarrell Miller versus, we'll say, Carlos Takam, would you watch that fight?
No. Because as I just said, I think his last 6 fights maybe should be called no contests. I don't think.
That's a very good. That actually is a very good point you made there, actually, and it's something that I find very strange that some fighters who've been popped don't have their fights called no contest, and some do. It's very kind of hit and miss. We're like, you were clearly cheating in that fight, but we give you the win anyway. It's like, why?
To me, he's committed. Look, to me, this is the fact that he's cheated to that extent in a sport like boxing. If indeed it is a sport, I always think of it as being a sort of Western martial art, but we'll call it a sport, right? To me, that's a police matter. But because to me, it's as bad as having a horse's shoe in your glove. You know, you're endangering another man's life by cheating outside the rules. This is as bad as, you know, when Panama Lewis pulled the horsehair out of Resto.
I remember watching Assault in the Ring. It was crazy.
I mean, and that was a police matter. And I believe, am I right in saying Lewis, I know he was banned for life, but he went to prison, I think, for about 18 months or something.
I think it was, yeah. And it did more than just, it caught, like, Billy Collins, like, that pretty much cost him his life. He went off the rails after that.
He committed suicide, or he drove, he was in a car wreck, which they thought
I think it was officially a car wreck, but I think that a lot of people said, like, he meant to do it without, like, you know, that sort of way.
Yeah, and I don't see any difference between that and what Miller's done, because he's all right. He's done it pharmaceutically instead of just, you know, bringing an iron bar into the ring and battering the guy. But it amounts to the same thing. You know, he's endangering another man's life in an extremely dangerous sport anyway.
I want to touch on something that Chris here says. The problem is consistency. Miller is clearly cheated, but why don't we see people calling for Canelo to get a lifetime ban? Fury, Whyte. I'm not saying this shouldn't happen, but we need to be consistent. That's a great little topic there. Now, I wasn't on YouTube when any of them really. I know the Dillian Whyte one I was, when any of them popped. It's a kind of grey area, because I genuinely, someone asked me earlier, do you think Povetkin should ever come back to boxing after 2 failed drug tests? And my answer is simply, honestly, once is enough for me.
Yeah.
I think once is enough.
Well, consistency, absolutely. I agree with Chris, but at the same time, we should. I'm not a zero tolerance sort of guy. I was talking specifically about Miller and what he's been popped for. There's a difference between that and somebody drinking an energy drink and it's got some sort of banned substance in it. I think we have to take each case on its merits, is the wrong word, or demerits, if you like. But I mean, I wouldn't compare, say, Whyte's quote unquote offence with something like Miller. Miller's been caught twice with drugs that you have to use intravenously, and I think that's sort of unavoidable. You can't say, well, I accidentally injected myself, or a lot of those substances, you're not going to find them in your mashed potato, are you? Or you know what I mean, or your soup. No. So I think, yeah, Chris's point is right, but consistency is absolutely right. You won't get this because there are different ruling bodies and there are different athletic commissions, especially in the States. You know, I lived in the United States. It's basically 50 countries under one.
Yeah, it is literally. It is. Yeah. They're not like, it's not all one thing. It's like every state is different. It's a country, basically.
And and I have many criticisms about the British Boxing Board of Control, but essentially I support the concept of having a British Boxing Board of Control. I know it's kind of like when people talk about the government, there's the concept of government and there's corrupt governments, and the two things are different. There's plenty of corruption. Whenever you have a government or a corporation or a charity or a trade union, there's plenty of room for corruption. Does that mean the concept of those things is wrong? Not necessarily. So I think the board at times do a very good job, and certainly with regards to safety. If you look at the way Conlon was treated after he, immediately taken to hospital, this was learned. Mistakes were made during the Watson tragedy with Chris Eubank. He was taken to the wrong hospital. They didn't have a neurology department. So they studied this incident, and they really improved the safety for boxers considerably. So I think there's a lot of good work the board have done that's gone under the radar. Having said that, I think we share criticisms of them in certain with regards to judges and, decisions. But you won't get, to get back to what Chris was saying, you won't get consistency in a country, certainly in America, where you've got 50 different commissions or whatever, and four ruling bodies, and God knows what else. It's very difficult to have consistency.
I think Hatman touched on that. He said it's so difficult to impose a lifetime ban because you could have every state in America could agree Darrell Miller's banned for life. He'd go Panama. Oh yes, we'll have you.
We used to look at Danny Williams in this country.
He's fought in Panama a few times.
Completely shot to bits, and yet he gets, what is it, a Lithuanian license or something like that.
It's disgraceful in a way. Like when you see that, like it just makes you kind of just put your head down like that and think this goddamn sport sometimes when you see that.
That's the ugly side of boxing. That's have you ever read that book, Dark Trade?
No.
I can't remember who wrote it now. It's a very good boxing book. I recommend it. I'll have to look up who wrote it. I can't remember. It's the hazards of getting old, G-man. You forget these things.
Dark. I can look that up anyway and have a look because I love reading some of them boxing books.
Yeah, Dark Trade is cool. It's very good. Deals with that sort of thing that you're alluding to.
There is a lot, and but I'm going to finish with this. Like the concept of the WBC and VADA clean boxing program, I'm all for that. I think it's a good concept, but as you say about corruption, there's always that linger. Would a cash cow, would they get preferred treatment? I mean, like there's a good example. Now, I can't say it on air for obvious reasons. I'll tell you about it backstage if you haven't already heard about it, where there was a specific fighter who failed the UCAD test, and that's still not been released yet. Now, I'll tell you about that backstage if you haven't already heard about it. If you know about it, you can always give me a hint. But that has happened, and it happened quite recently, like pre-COVID, but not far pre-COVID. So it's not like we're talking years ago. We're talking, recent enough.
No, I'm not familiar with that. You'll have to tell me backstage about that. But I would imagine it's got something. You tell me. It's got something to do with the fact that he is a big cash cow.
I wouldn't say big cash cow, but definitely every boxing fan would know who he is.
Okay.
He'd be on that level, and with the right opponent, could still do a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So
I think people also forget some others who have failed tests. Roy Jones, James Toney.
Roy Jones failed tests with the Richard. What was his name? I can't remember his last name. Richard something.
Richard Hall, I think, was the
Richard
guy.
Hall. That was it. I think they both failed that test, actually.
They did, yeah.
Which even shows how good Roy Jones actually was, because the guy Roy Jones still beat the crap out of him. That was one of his best performances.
I mean, I said I was suspicious of Reynoso's lot, but I was always suspicious of Manny Pacquiao, very suspicious of Juan Manuel Marquez. Ironically, when he knocked out Pacquiao,
I've never seen anything like that. When he knocked out Pacquiao with the acne, I've never seen Marquez looking like that.
Yeah, it looked like manufactured weight to me. And also, who was the other one I was going to? Oh, when Pacquiao fought Cotto, I thought
Miguel Cotto, yeah,
right here, something's not right. I don't know. I just watched that fight live, and I was thinking, this guy was a flyweight.
Never in a million years. I got a big up because I still can't believe sometimes when I see this, the Ben Odom. Mate, I honest to God, like I cannot thank you enough for that. £100, my days. Enjoy the live, G and Joe. Unfortunately, I would argue that, and I agree with you on this. 90% of the top 20 boxers in the heavyweight division are on some kind of PED. There's no way a skilled heavyweight boxer. There's no way heavyweight boxer can be in the top 10, beat rivals. Good chat tonight. Again, man, you are a legend for that. And I agree. I would be amazed if in years to come we don't hear about Anthony Joshua, Dillian, Whyte, Tyson Fury. I mean, Deontay Wilder prides himself on I'm clean. His brother tested positive for performance enhancers, Marcellus, and he was garbage. So shows how good they work for him. But it's everywhere. Like even the people who say I'd never, people close to them have. So it is rampant. I believe it is, and I think that some people would say, well, that actually makes it an even playing field. But nevertheless, it should still be clean. I feel like, what did they do in the 1920s? What did they do in the 30s? They were going in there eating. Like, I remember Rocky Marciano in one of his documentaries. They said he lived on training camp on veg, potatoes, and steak. That was his meal.
Do you ever see that picture of Marciano with his mum cooking for him? She's
an
enormous woman. She's built like a bloody tank. You can see where he got his physical strength from. Not just the food, but I think his genetics. But as far as the drugs thing go, I mean, Ben's saying, I don't know about 90%, but I take Ben's point. I think he's right, and I agree with you. In time to come, this is going to. I mean, it's not just boxing, is it? You go way back to athletics, like Florence Griffith Joyner was like, she was 10 seconds better in the 100 meters or whatever it was, and you got what was his name? The cyclist, who won 6 Tour de France's, whose name again? I'm terrible with names. But
Lance Armstrong.
Sorry?
Lance Armstrong.
Lance Armstrong, yeah. I mean, it's rife in sports. It's a great shame. What can we do about it? Probably nothing. I don't hold with the idea that it's an even playing field. I think that's rubbish. But but it's going to get to the point where, I mean, you're a big F1 fan, aren't you?
Yes.
And I know nothing about F1. To me, it just, I'm not being rude, but it looks like fast traffic to me. But people who I know who like F1, they tell me that a big part of it is the car you're driving and how it's engineered and so on and so forth. So you can be the best driver in the world, but you ain't going to win it if you're driving a Mini. So when you talk about fighters, if we're going to allow them to take drugs, are we saying that the guy who wins the title fight is the chemist who happened to manufacture this body on a fighter that gave him or her a greater advantage than the opponent? Are we going to see? We've already got strength and conditioning guys. We've already got boxing trainers. And are we going to introduce a chemist? Is every team going to have a chemist? I don't hold with this idea that we just open the floodgates, because once the floodgates are open, you can't put that water back, and it's
no, exactly that, and it will get like that it would get kind of almost like F1. Like, consensus is Max Verstappen, the world champion, is the best driver, but it took him a couple of years because Lewis Hamilton had the fastest car, and it was only when he got the second fastest, which it really was, he was able to finally win. And it'd be like that probably in boxing if it was kind of like that. It's only when fighter B, who is genuinely the better fighter, is able to get his hands on what fighter A has. Now he's the best. Yeah.
And do you really want boxing to be reduced to who's got the best pharmaceuticals? I personally don't.
No, I hope it never. I hope that there is something that can be done with it. I don't know, and nothing is ever short. No one's going to be uncorruptible. I think unless you're talking about Batman, then you're not going to find someone organization who's not corruptible. Exactly.
I was always on the side of the Joker, so go on. No, I mean, you're not. Yeah, you're right. You're not going to get it. But there's no ultimate victory. You got to keep. If you believe in fairness in any walk of life, there's no ultimate victory. You keep banging the drum for it. You keep fighting for it. And then when you're 6 foot under, you hopefully have passed on that legacy to someone else to carry it on. Because there are no, as you said, you like history. I agree with you. I'm very interested in history as well. Certainly, if you look at things like social history and progression for working people in like education and healthcare and all that sort of stuff, it's been won, but it can be lost. You can't stop the gas ever. And it's the same with a subject like PEDs in boxing. It's a war with no ending. It's
going to go on for decades to come. I think as long as I'll be a fan of boxing, which hopefully be the rest of my life, it will always be something that I think is there or thereabouts in people's minds.
100%.
Lads, I've come to an hour. To be honest with you, I'm picking my friend up now in a wee bit, but he may wait because we've gone on longer than I thought. It's been great. Before we go, I want to let you plug your channel a bit. There's 95 in the building now. God knows how many. 103 now, actually. On the floor to you. Where can we find you, and what do you do on your channel?
Well, it's Joe Stunner Boxing. and it's a real stripped down, very basic channel. I just give my views on boxing. I'm like I said earlier, I'm in my mid-50s, so I've watched boxing since I was probably about 8 or 9. Didn't really necessarily know what I was looking at then, but you know, that's a long time. I've watched several decades worth of boxing, and I just give my opinions on fights that are coming up. I do a little bit of history. I'm very interested in not just women's fights because they're very good fights sometimes, but I'm interested in the evolution of the women's game. I think it's of course a sociological from point of view. I think that's very interesting to see because I remember the days when there was no women's boxing. And I just give my opinions, and it's dead simple. I just hit the record button, give my opinions. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, but I'm never for sale. So if you like my channel and subscribe, you know, I really appreciate it. I've only got about 300 subscribers. Love them all. Cheers to the support. If any of you guys can give me some support, I'd love that too.
Of course.
And I just want to say, G-Man, thanks for having me on, mate. It's been great. I love talking boxing. I know you know your stuff. I'm a massive fan of yours. Thank you again for when I started my channel, G-Man was the guy who sort of plugged the channel. So nice one, mate.
And I'll keep plugging it. I'll keep plugging it. Have no fear of that. And this won't be the last time I'll have you on either. And what I said at the start of this is Joe put some doubt in my mind saying he doesn't know if the Fury Whyte fight will happen after all. But I'm going to assume it is. So from now until we have that fight, I'm going to be doing similar like this, trying to get someone on you every week, a YouTuber, maybe even some fans. Maybe the Friday before, I might just leave a link and just let people come on and give their 2 cents. Maybe the fans pick. But from now until then, we're going to get a different YouTuber on, hopefully each week. You know, your guys like your Jamie, your Chris, you know, people like that on, and we'll give our 2 cents on it. So for now, I'm going to leave it at that. Joe, do you want to say anything else? You want to add anything?
Well, why not have several of us on at once? We'll do a little panel thing. That'd be great, wouldn't it? But
I always find the panels can get a bit. I like the one-to-one.
Okay.
I like the one-to-one. That's my kind of like preference. Has always been the one-to-one.
Yeah, well, big thanks to everyone in the chat as well, and especially Ben for the £100 for G-Man. Money well spent, mate.
Mate, I appreciate you. You've no idea how actually much that helps. You really don't. But appreciate all that. Lads, I'm going to leave you with that. Peace.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye for now.